What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Homie Hangout, where we help others move in excellence. And Mentiroso Matt, that's what we're gonna call him, right? That's the new fool unlocked. That's Mohawk Matt's new name in my book. For those unfamiliar with the Spanish language, Mentiroso means liar. Okay, and so I saw an interview he did on Cam Capone, and this is what I'm gonna do. I learned in communication class that you start off with a positive, and then you have your criticism, and then you end on a positive note also, right? It kind of helps it go down. And so I'm gonna try that here. I'm gonna do that here. He talks a lot about his sobriety. He's got 6+ years sober, and encourages sobriety, sponsors other people, and salute to him. I respect it. You know, I get props to him, right? I get it. It is admirable. I do think that his heart is in the right place in the work that he does and the message that he sends. It's a noble one, and I respect it. So my issue is with his prison experience. Okay. So he was in the California Department of Corrections a few times, did a handful of years. And apparently this stuff that I'm about to tell you happened on a level 4 yard, but it didn't happen. Okay, let's just be real. It didn't fucking happen. And on any yard. But in his story, this happens on level 4, 270 design prison. I have done time on level 4, 270 prisons. And yeah, so to give you a little backstory, right? I saw his Cam Capone interview. Apparently he's been on Soft White Underbelly, and he's one of American Cholo's boys and that stuff. I don't really pay attention to those channels, so I was unfamiliar with him before the Cam Capone thing. And then somebody was like, hey, bro, you got to check this out. And boy, so I checked it out. And I had to pause and rewind a couple times, like, wait a minute, he said what? Wait. So look, his story is he grew up in the Valley, right? SGV, I believe. And he's a white guy. He was into graffiti and all that stuff. And then, in the era where a lot of the taggers and the tag bangers had to kind of make a choice, right? And convert over. He was a part of that. So he had kind of picked a neighborhood and started banging that neighborhood. A neighborhood that had a green light on them already, right? But started banging that neighborhood, and which was a southern neighborhood. And then he went to the county jail as an adult. And when he went to the county jail, he was in a holding tank with all these hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people. And the white guys were like, hey, what race are you? And he said, I'm white. And they were like, all right, you're over here with us. And so he ran wood while he was incarcerated, but he was a Southsider when he was in the streets. So that's a story for another video, because I've actually seen kind of stuff like that happen. Not running with your crew when you get back out, but I've seen people make that choice when they go to prison. But we'll save that for another day. That's not what this is about. So Cam Capone asks him, hey, what's the craziest thing that you've seen in prison? Because that's what a lot of these podcasters want to know. Man, what's the craziest thing you saw? And people are encouraged, I think, to embellish. Now, as somebody who did some years in the California Department of Corrections and did some years on level 4 yards and was involved in violence there and observed violence there, there's gruesome stuff that happens. You don't need to embellish, right? You don't need to put a 10 on a 2. But this is what he says. He says, we were on the yard and a White Crip came, and a white guy who was claiming to be a Crip came, and the Woods were not going to accept that, which is pretty standard course for pre-end of hostilities stuff, right? And so we went and got at the blacks, and the blacks were like, nah, bro, we ain't tripping on dude, right? And you guys can have him. And stuff like that has happened before, right? That's not unheard of. There are white guys that claim Crip that held their mud all through the system, right? Snow Rock, Whack Deuce, right? Shout out to Whack Deuce. So there are a few that held their mud, but there are some who come in that either there's nobody from their neighborhood there to be able to vouch for them, or they're not really from a neighborhood. They just kind of watched, TV too much or something, listened to too much music, and it was like LBC, like It varies. And those guys, no, are you going to start a whole riot? And so Mentiroso Matt explains that process, and it's fairly accurate from my experience in how he explains it. But this is where things go a little left, right? So it says, first unlock in the morning. This is a level 4 270 design prison. The dude comes out, right? The white guy comes out, and he goes to where the blacks normally kick it, but the blacks aren't there that day. They went to kick it somewhere else because they knew the yard was going to go down, right? So he goes over there. Two white guys from Riverside, he said, get on them, right? They were lifers. They had nothing to lose. They raised their hands. Get this race traitor, right? And they jump on them with these big old knives. And they had the knives tied to their hands with sheets. Because according to Mentiroso Matt, when you're blasting people in prison, the blood can get so slippery you could drop the knife, right? You go to hit them and boop, it's gone. And then you're going to be in trouble. So they tied them to their hands. Not sure how they made it through the whole getting patted down process, which normally happens when you walk out to the yard, right? If they had knives tied to their hands, right, it's kind of hard to put your hands up, and get patted down. Maybe they dug them up on the yard real fast, then tied them to their hands. I don't know. He didn't get in that much detail. He just said they tied them to their hands with ripped up bed sheet. So the story gets better. The story gets better. So they get on them, right? And they're blasting them. Boom. All in the head and the face. Doesn't make a whole lot of sense. I mean, unless your weapon stock is actual rebar, which is rare in prison, then the headshots, you're going to bend the knife. Even if it's rebar, you're just going to dull it, right? And so you really don't want to take a bunch of headshots to start off with, right? You want to go for soft tissue, right? Chest, back, sides. And then once you're having your way with them, if you choose to go up top and start doing gruesome stuff to their face and their neck, then so be it. But apparently these guys, they had super bone crushers, maybe because it was tied. And so they're getting him. They get on a dude. He's laying on the ground. He's lifeless. They're getting him, and they're blasting him in the neck so much that his head is starting to come off, right? They're starting to sever his head with these prison knives from stabbing him in the neck so much. And the SEALs haven't seen it. Nobody has seen this, right? It's the unlock for the yard, and nobody's caught on to this. Mentiroso Matt and his homeboy, they get down. This is what he says. They get down waiting for the alarm. Never in my life have I seen people get down before the alarm. Think about it. Like, have some common sense, right? You're attracting attention. If nobody's seen the skirmish that's going on over there, you going to lay down on the ground is going to get attention. And then the SEAL's going to look like, what the fuck's this dude laying down? What am I missing? Right? So then you're fronting them off. You're kind of dry snitching on what's going on, and you will be held accountable for that. But in this prison today, it was different. So people started proning out, and still nobody thought it was odd that guys were laying down on the ground on a level 4 yard first thing in the morning, right? So the guys stay on him, and they're on him, and they're on him, and his head's coming off more and more, more and more, and the blood is coagulating on the ground already. I'm not proud to say, but the fact is, I've blasted people in prison before, and I've blasted people in the streets before. And I have got their blood on my hand, and I can assure you that it did not coagulate quite that fast. For those who don't know what coagulate means, maybe Mentiroso Matt doesn't know what coagulate means. It's as the blood is exposed to the air, it starts to kind of gel up a little bit, right? But not that fast. It takes a long time for that to start happening. So anyways, but this dude had different. He was different, maybe because he had White Crip blood. I don't know. But salute to the White Crips that stood tall in prison, man. I got some jokes here, but props to you guys, man. You guys had a journey unlike or a journey that few can't really appreciate, right? So, but this guy maybe is different, So they're on him, and his head's coming off, and one of the youngsters just kicks his head, pow, and the head comes off. The head comes off all the way. That's it, right? And still, no yard down. Still no yard down. There's guys laying down, but there's no alarm still. Still. These youngsters are slipping and sliding in the blood, and they get so tired, right? that they unwrap the knife from their hands, throw the knives, just kind of kick back like, yeah, fool. What's up, bro? So you want to be sellies and AdSig or what? Yeah? All right, cool. All right. Hey, you think we could rinse off and get away with this? I don't know, maybe. And finally, another CO comes from somewhere else, sees what is happening. He hits his alarm. He's like, hey, what the hell? And he asks these guys, how long has this been going on? And they're like, man, I don't know. I don't know nothing. But you look up and see the tower cop, and our tower cop is a female officer, and she has the gun, and she's pointed, but she's paralyzed in fear. Her eyes are like this. They're like Mentiroso Matt before he got sober, right? And she's paralyzed in fear. She never hit the alarm. Now, do gunners get paralyzed in fear? Yes. Is the gunner the only person that's going to see something like that happening on a yard? No. I have been a part of some incidents, and I have seen some incidents that have gone on a lot longer than expected, right? But long enough to sever somebody's head? No. That didn't happen. And I will tell you this. If any group segment severed somebody's head, that you'd hear about that, right? That would be news. That would be on the prison grapevine. And we did time around the same time. Okay. I reached out to Dubs because I know Dubs did time at, stayed in prison longer than I did and started a little bit before me. Hey bro, you ever heard of this? Right? You ever heard of this situation? Maybe I missed it, Maybe it didn't get on the northern grapevine. It just stayed on the southern white grapevine. I don't know. And of course, that did not happen. Okay, that did not happen. Lose my earpiece here. All right. So yeah, that's ridiculous, right? That was a lot. And so there's another story, right? Get one more story. I'll give you one more, and then there's a lot of stuff to talk about. But he has this very long part of his interview where it sounds like an incredibly heroic guy, right? Mentiroso Matt is a hero. But the thing is, it didn't happen, right? It just didn't happen. Apparently in a prison, I'm assuming a level 4, right? Seems like that's where he did his time at. But it doesn't matter what level, this still didn't happen in the California Department of Corrections. He says, where there was a riot, right? There was a riot. It was a race riot. I'm not going to say with who, but it was a race riot. Okay, but he's running with the wood, so it's, not hard to figure out, right? So it's this race riot, and during the race riot, people get control of the control booth, right? The other guys that were fighting, right? The white guys were fighting in the race riot. They get control of the control booth, and they start popping doors. Now, that would be news. That would be news. And Cam Capone, even he was like, his BS meter was like, he was like, wait a minute, that happens in there? Mentiroso Matt says, oh, more often than you think. It didn't happen once, my guy. It didn't happen once. Not in the modern era, right? Not when you were doing time in prison. Not in California. But it gets better. So in the popping of the doors, okay, there's 2 female COs that are cool. They're not illegitimate. They're not, breaking the laws, but they're cool. They'll give you what you got coming, maybe a little bit more. But these other guys that they're fighting in a race riot have them in a cell. And he notices in the riot, I don't know why he's in the building. In the riot, a lot of times riots happen on the yard, unless it kicked off on the yard and in the buildings. I don't know the particulars, okay? But for some reason, he's in the building and there's a riot. And so he takes a break in the riot because he notices something funny going on over there and is wondering, like, hey, where the CO's at? And notices these guys blocking this cell. And it's just, but there's somebody in the control booth controlling buttons, but you're still fighting in the day room. I don't get it, right? It's really hard to make lies make sense, right? So anyways, he goes over there, he puts his cape on, right? Captain Saber, and goes inside and actually does a respectable thing. If this were true, this would be admirable, right? That he stops these other guys from taking advantage of these women in the ways that would get you removed if you caught a case like that coming into prison. And it was Clay. He's like, it was that we were right there. Then I stopped it and got him out, shut the door. It's like, don't trip, you're gonna be okay. And save those women from being taken advantage of by these other guys that they're fighting. And then I guess just kind of jump back into the riot, like okay, hey, I'm back. Tag me in, coach. Right? I don't. It's ridiculous. It's really ridiculous, right? So that didn't happen once, let alone multiple times. In terms of getting control of the control booth and popping doors and all this other shit, there is no way, right? It didn't happen. And here's my thing. So that was my critique. And there's a lot more stuff in the interview I could critique. It's frustrating, right? Because people who have never been to prison or people unfamiliar with the California prison system, they want to believe that that's how it is. You know, that's how they picture it in their mind, right? Just booty bandits all over the place and just all this stuff, right? People getting their heads cut off on the yard. And that's just not the reality. The reality is ugly, and it's true. But you have these interviewers, these podcasters, the Johnny Mitchells, the Cam Capones, shit, the American Cholos, the folks that have never been there, right? The Vlads, the No Jumpers. And they want people to come on and tell these fantastic stories because the public who hasn't been there loves that stuff, right? So it runs numbers, it runs views. And it makes it tough for those who are just being honest and transparent. It's not sexy enough for people, right? It's not dramatic enough. But if you have been around and you hear this, you're like, bro, you can't be taken seriously, you know? And I get it. I think the group that he's with I think the boys group on American Cholos channel, I don't think any of them have been to prison, right? I don't know exactly who's in that group, but so maybe they believe it, or maybe they didn't hear that, or I don't know, but these podcasters bring these dudes on to tell these crazy stories, and it really is like new fool unlocked type shit, right? Anybody that's been around would hear that and be like, bro, cut it out. Stop it. What year? What prison? Right? That was my question in the comments. What year? What prison? It's because that's something like that's seared in your memory. He says that he can still hear it in his head, right? So when did that happen and where? Right? I call bullshit. And it's unfortunate. But now again, to end on the positive, I do respect that, you know, throughout the interview, he did say some things of value, right? Like, man, I made a really bad decision at this point in my life. Or, you know, I really missed out on this opportunity. Here are the different pivot points in my life and the choice that I made and how that had a negative impact. And how graffiti, right, and that art form has kind of been a healing component to him and a lifelong passion. And just the treacherousness of prison is legit. His specific examples are hogwash. But again, I respect the push, right? And he appears to be successful, you know, and he appears to have earned it. It's just, you are now a representation of the California Department of Corrections. And you're full of shit. That's the downside, right? Is you could send that same message without having to blow everything out of proportion, you know? So that's my thing, man. I don't have anything against the guy except for the fact that he lied about his time in prison, right? And I don't know, man, it sounds like he wasn't even on a level 4. I'm not going to say that because I don't know, right? I'll get his housing history in CDC and find out, but that's going to take a couple weeks. So I don't know. It really does though sound like somebody who hasn't been on a level 4 yard, right? Like it's that out of touch with the reality. I don't know, man. And like I said, I haven't watched the South White Underbelly one or the American Cholo stuff or wherever else he's been. So I don't know. He might have other fantastic stories, but that shit, everybody would hear about it. Like, when you hear this stuff, even if you've never been in prison, when you hear these stories, have a little bit of common sense and critical thinking, right? Damn, inmates regularly take over the control booth in prisons. I feel like I don't hear about that very often, right? Um, I think if that happened, I would hear about it. You would, trust me. And so, anyways, that's it, man. I'm just getting back in the groove of things. I got some other stuff coming up later on today, but back on YouTube, man. So you guys make sure you like, subscribe, maybe turn off the bell notifications and turn them back on because I haven't been posting in a while. So we'll see how this goes, man. But help others move in excellence. That's what homies do. Help yourself at the same time because you're worth it. Help your community because they need you. Respects, everybody.